Hi, so this is a quick video to show you how I kind of came up with my design for the Olympic logo project. So this is my research. My research is very basic because I just did it today. And so I researched, I'm doing it on Roll Winter 2030. That's going to be my place where we're hosting, and what I researched was Roll itself. There's not much famous in Roll. There's just a castle and a high street, and that's about it. And I also researched Switzerland and what was iconic about Switzerland, so like the Alps and watches and Swiss Army knives and stuff like that, but also Swiss design. And so I looked at kind of the Basel School of Typography, and I looked at kind of poster design in Switzerland, and it's very kind of like using very kind of sans serif fonts and lots of bold colors. And so I thought that could be a way of working. So I kind of used that in the back of my mind when I'm kind of looking at imagery. Next thing I did was I did some sketching. So I went out and sketched Roll Castle. So I went out in my sketchbook and just kind of sketched some angles of it. So I have that as a little bit of reference. And then I kind of took the idea and kind of pushed it along, the idea of using this kind of the paper kind of silhouette kind of look, and then try to transpose that. And it became a bit complicated, so I kind of steered clear of that. And then I thought about these three towers on the Roll Castle, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I could use those as shapes like this. And so I thought I could like take these little crescent shapes and I could turn them into a little bit of a kind of a grid pixel pattern that I could maybe recreate things with. And so then I kind of thought, oh, that's kind of, I could also use the Swiss rings rather like this and kind of like try and do something interesting with them. So that was my plan. So I opened up Illustrator and I imported a couple of reference images already. So what I've got is I use layers here, and I created a layer called Photos Ref. And so I'm just going to bring in another photo. So I'm going to go File and Place. I want a picture of this, so I'm going to place that there. It's a bit big at the moment, but I'll just scale it down and position it. And now I'm going to lock this layer because I don't really want to do anything to it. So now I've got another layer, so layer 2. And if you don't have a layer, you can just go to the plus thing and create a new layer. And this is going to be my artwork layer. So what I want to do is create these sort of chevron kind of shapes. And so I'm going to use, I reckon, the polygon or the star tool. I'll use the polygon tool. And the polygon tool, if you press up and down, you can get loads of extra points and stuff to your shape. So I'm going to get 3 points, and I'm going to press Shift to lock it so that it's pointing upwards. So I've got that. I'm going to hide the photos layer because it's a bit complicated. And what I want is I want to have this sort of like squeezed up, like a kind of a sharp chevron. But then I've got a little bit of a problem because I need to get rid of this half. So I'm going to use the white pointer, and I'm going to grab this, and using the smart guides, I can see that I've gone halfway across, and that's kind of what I want. So I've ended up with like a quarter of what I need. So now I'm going to press Option and duplicate it, and use the Reflect tool to kind of push it over there. So now I've got an opposite side. I'm going to move it back, and then the smart guides will snap it in place. Then I'm going to do the same thing, press Option to copy, and then I'm going to use the Reflect tool just to kind of spin it around there. Press Shift to kind of lock it to 90 degrees, and then smart guides will snap it in. And make sure your smart guides are on by going to View and Smart Guides. So now we've got this. And so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And what I want to do is I want to take this whole object and then duplicate it. And then the smart guides will make it not move too much. And then press Control D. And now I've duplicated it a whole bunch of times, which is kind of what I want to do. Then I'm going to duplicate them again, the whole lot, and the smart guides will lock them in place. I'm going to grab the whole lot again and duplicate them. And now I've got this. And now I've got like a massive grid of these things, which is exactly what I wanted, like all of these. So I'm going to turn on my ref again. And problem is I can't really see through them. So I'm going to go to transparency which is here, and I'm going to make these like 50%, something like that. And they're probably a bit big, so I need to kind of create some sort of resolution here, as it were, and just bring them over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of recreate the Alp with these objects, which might be a bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure it'll work out fine. So I want to get the pointy bit here to kind of be at the top there, and in fact more of a pointy bit like that, and then move it over a bit. So I'm just sort of trying to line up, and that kind of looks okay. And what I want to do is get rid of some of these now. So I want to get rid of these. I'm just kind of grabbing them a little bit randomly, and then get rid of these, and these, and this. And what I'm doing is I'm essentially trying to create like a version of this Alp using these shapes, if that kind of makes sense. And keep that one because that one sort of has that like shadow there. And then all of this lot I want to kind of get rid of, and I'm going to kind of go up to sort of here-ish. So I'm going to get rid of all of these. Get rid of all of these. And this. And this. I want to kind of keep some of them because I want to kind of create that sort of shadow area. That looks kind of good. And then get rid of that, this, that. Yeah, that looks good. And then, okay, that's kind of cool. And I'm going to turn off my the bottom layer again. Now we can see I'm sort of coming up with I'm going to have to do a little bit of modification to make it look a little bit more like a mountain. But that's kind of looking good. And I'm going to probably cheat a little bit and take some of these elements and to kind of create the shape a little bit more, because otherwise I will really struggle. And so here you can see that, you know, I wouldn't have this shape normally there, but I'm going to sort of cheat a little bit. And I think that these kind of colors are okay, so I'm going to grab these, but I want to make these like a light blue, like that kind of, but the actual fill. So, so go to the fill, and I'm going to change that to like blue, and then I want to change that one to blue as well, and I think that one to black. And I want to bring up my reference again because I want to see what I'm doing. Oh yeah, so some of these are sort of like dark blue, so I'm going to make those like rich blue, and this rich blue, this one, colour. And actually I quite like that dark blue generally, so I'm going to keep it. So I think it looks quite good. And these ones, I think I'll go for the light blue and dark blue. And you're gonna have to I'm sort of taking a few liberties here, but you can. And I want to kind of make this quite a beautiful shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of copy some bits that I think I'm missing. And I mean, I think that this is looking okay, but I'm going to take a couple of liberties to create this as a shape. Turn that off. So now I've ended up with this, which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of quite I think it's quite interesting, but I want to make these, I'll delete a couple of these to kind of create something that's a bit more kind of interesting as a shape. And yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. It's not, I don't think it's perfect, and I could probably spend a lot more time working on it, but I'm going to leave it as that. And that's going to be sort of the basis of my logo. The next thing is that I want to create some text, and so I'm going to go for this, and mine is automatically Helvetica, and Helvetica is a Swiss font, so I'm going to stick with that. And so bold looks good, and maybe I quite like just that. It's really simple, and I'm going to keep it like that, and see if I can just kind of get that fitted into here. And I might change the color, so I'm going to use the eyedropper to change it to that color, so that it's actually my elements here I think are, because these are on transparency, so I'm going to take the transparencies off, bring them up to 100%, which is a bit of a shame because I think that these are not great in terms of color. So I'm going to select all of these, so go to select, same fill color, and I'm going to change the color of these because I don't like that color. That one I prefer. I'm going to grab this and select same fill color, and I'm going to turn these to a lighter shade, which I might have to mix or find. So I'm going to go up to here and I'm going to mix it myself. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. So now I can use the eye picker and I can change it to that color. The problem is that using this as a font is a bit pain, so I'm going to create an outline, so I turn it into an object. It makes it a bit easier to deal with. So I'm going to move it like that. So that looks good. And then my next is going to be Winter Games. Ooh, that'll probably be Winter Games 2030. It's a bit big at the moment. And I'm going to just slot that in underneath because it looks quite tidy. I'm looking at the space around that to make it fit. So it's kind of, I quite like the way that this kind of climbs up. I might go for this as black, and I might go for this as this color, or maybe this color. That gives it, it's okay, but it's a bit dull, and I might go for this as a Swiss color, so maybe go for like a nice red color. And you can choose whichever one you like. Now I just want to create the Olympic rings, so I'm going to create my first one, and I'm going to make the stroke red, and then I'm going to make the that stroke bigger. So I'm going to end up with this. And what I want to do is, if I go back to here, I want to kind of make it like that. I kind of like that as sort of shapes. And if we look at that, it's blue, black, red, yellow, green. So let me just change the colors on those first. Ooh, not the fill, but the stroke. Blue, and copy this. And this is black. Copy this. And red. And then a couple more. I'm just going to copy them. Copy two at the same time because I'm not bothered. And that one's yellow, and then that one is green. Okay, so now we've got our Olympic logo, and what I want to do is I want to kind of make it as similar to the real logo as possible. So I think that the stroke should be a little bit lower, so 6. That looks pretty good to me. Let me just look at the reference. Oh no, they're intersecting, so that's kind of something I got wrong. So I'm going to bring them together and bring that one together. And then the smart guides will help me a little bit in this. So we're kind of looking at something like that. I think that the stroke needs to be a bit smaller. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to call that my Olympic logo, but what I want to do is I want to take one and make it like really chunky. So I've got the the kind of that kind of color scheme that they've kind of got, and then I want to take the object and I want to expand it. So I want to get rid of the strokes, so I've just got real objects, and I'm going to change the transparency and I'm going to make it screen it or overlay. So now I'm getting some interesting shapes, and I'm going to change the opacity to kind of like that, and I want to put that over this so I kind of get that like lovely kind of overlaid look to it, and maybe take these and I'm going to group them, and I'm going to make them much bigger, so that this is going to be like the backdrop to my center back. It's kind of looking a bit confusing, but I quite like the sort of that color, but I might come back to that. But for now, I am just going to use this, and I'm going to position this in the right place. And now I would call that done. So that would be basing all of my research on that. So that's one copy. I'm going to take this and then play around with it a little bit more to kind of create some different looks to it. Maybe use the idea of the this kind of sideways type. I kind of like that. I think that's quite interesting. So I can maybe take this as an object and use the angle of the mountain here to kind of create that as a feeling. That might work. I get this at the same angle as that. Should have done this mathematically, but you can do that yourself. And that kind of gives it a different look. And I quite like this iconography, and what I would do with this was I'd spin it out and use it to kind of create different shapes for different events, and so maybe kind of use this as a way of drawing kind of different parts of the Olympics, and so I could represent sort of like show jumping in a different way, or represent track and field in a different way. And that was kind of how I would do it. So that's it, really.